Then one day, it just appeared. Not drifting, not damaged, but parked, motionless, in the middle of Cordon 7's orbital defense grid, right in the heart of the Zoltrian Empire's territory. The same empire that had once called humans primitive, emotional savages, only fit for border colonies and contract wars. What rattled everyone wasn't just that it returned. It was how. Zoltrian control systems failed. Their drones spiraled out of formation, like insects confused by a predator's scent. Communications blacked out across 4 sectors for 11 minutes. Long-range scans refused to focus, showing only white static around the ship. Not an error. Interference. Designed. Controlled. When visual feeds finally went live, the image was surreal. There it was. Argonaut. The hull design unmistakably Terran, old, archaic even by Earth's own standards, but intact. No signs of decay, no impact scars, no visible retrofits. Just a single message, broadcast in every known galactic dialect on loop. Earth remembers. Back on Earth, they had long stopped believing in miracles. The once unified Terran Directorate had fractured into syndicates, alliance clusters, and isolationist regimes. Military funding had been gutted, colonies abandoned, a broken world nursing its wounds from wars it never fully won nor completely lost. But when that signal hit Earth's deep comm arrays, everything stopped. Traffic, broadcasts, even the Syndicate Council meeting paused mid-debate. Every surviving war vet, every orbital captain, every street kid in the spires looked to the skies again. Because the Argonaut wasn't just a ship. It was a grave marker, a reminder of Earth's old fire, its reckless courage, and its most painful failure. Commander Aldrich, now a tired man teaching war history in a crumbling Earth academy, felt his chest tighten when he saw the feed. He had served on the Argonaut's sister ship, Vanguard, lost in the same war. He stared at the screen, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Then the next message came, encrypted in an ancient Terran war code so old even most Earth systems needed a moment to decode it. We did not die. We evolved. The Zoltrians responded first. Fools that they were. A patrol fleet of 38 ships, full armament, advanced scanning arrays. They hailed, threatened, postured. Typical. And then, dead silence. All 38 vessels dropped off the grid, every system fried, hulls untouched, not destroyed, emptied. No life forms detected, no data retrieved. Just quiet metal husks floating in space. The galaxy began to panic. What returned was not the Argonaut they remembered. Something had happened out there. Beyond known space, beyond any charted jump line. Something that made men into something else. Something that even the old empires, smug in their ancient wisdom, could not explain. And in the center of that fear, Earth finally stood up again. Not with noise, not with war declarations, but with a chilling message whispered across 1,000 frequencies. We are what you made us. They didn't open the ship. That's what haunted everyone. The Argonaut just sat there, silent, still, unmoving, like it was waiting. Not a single hatch opened. Not one transmission responded to direct contact. It broadcasted only those 2 lines. Earth remembers, and we did not die. We evolved. Over and over. And still, they didn't move. Every empire, syndicate, and rogue power sent fleets, observation units, automated drones, infiltration mechs. Nothing worked. The moment anything crossed within 5,000 clicks of the ship, it just stopped functioning. Like a switch flipped inside the hardware. Like something inside the Argonaut simply decided, no. The Council of Stellar Hierarchy convened an emergency session. A rare thing, considering the old empires hadn't agreed on anything in 50 years. The Zoltrians blamed Earth. The Drylani accused them of data theft. The Thyran Collective said it was a weapon born of madness and black holes. Earth said nothing. Because Earth didn't have anything left to say. They hadn't even sent a ship. No reply, no delegation. They were as stunned as the rest of the galaxy. No one on Earth had the clearance to launch an operation. The Directorate was fractured. The old guard either dead or lost. The new leadership too afraid of war, too tired of being seen as relics of a forgotten empire. Except one man. Aldrich. He hadn't worn the uniform in decades, not since the fall of Kelris Outpost, not since he watched his men die in that vacuum-sealed hell while the Directorate Command pulled support to save some diplomatic envoy. He remembered every face, every scream, every betrayal. And now, sitting alone in his apartment in the ruined top tier of what used to be the Capitol Dome, Aldrich stared at the encrypted message again. We did not die. We evolved. He knew that code, knew it better than his own blood. It wasn't just any old war encryption. It was a special variant, Project Revenant, a last resort contingency built into only 2 ships, Vanguard and Argonaut. It meant one thing. They survived something Earth never imagined. And now they were back, changed, watching. He sent the request to the new Directorate, if you could even call them that. Bureaucrats in suits, hiding behind AI advisors and market consensus. It didn't matter. His message was short. I know the code. I served with the Vanguard. You don't have the guts for what's coming. I do. Give me a ship. They ignored it. Of course they did. So Aldrich didn't wait. He stole one. The Marauder's Wain was an old Terran gunship, retrofitted as a smuggler's ghost vessel. She'd been docked in the belt for years, half scrapped. But Aldrich had connections. Old war rats, ex-pilots, men who'd lost everything but remembered how to fly. They fixed her up in 5 days. Primitive systems, no AI, no hyper-quantum shields. But she had one thing the new ships didn't. Guts! They launched before anyone could stop them. By the time the Marauder's Wain reached Cordon 7's outer edge, galactic news had gone insane. The Zaltrian monarch was dead. Heart attack during a closed briefing. The Drylani had launched a covert missile toward the Argonaut, but it never reached target. It curved mid-flight and shot straight back into their own moon station. Something about that ship bent logic, broke the rules. The old soldier in Aldrich didn't care about the tech. He wanted to know who was still alive in there, and what had turned them into whatever the galaxy now feared. As he entered the outer edge of the suppression zone, alarms on the Marauder's Wain flared. Instruments scrambled, heat sensors redlined, hull temperature spiked. The crew started to panic. 2 tried to bail out in pods. Bad mistake. The pods vaporized instantly. No weapons fired, no warnings, just gone. Aldrich held his breath, gritted his teeth, looked at the old war photo taped above the dash. Vanguard crew smiling like fools. All dead now. Except maybe. He pushed forward. When they got within 4,800 clicks, everything shut down. Engines dead, lights out, comms fried. The stars outside the viewport blurred. Time seemed to stretch, then bend. The silence was heavy, not empty, but watching. Like the universe itself had paused to see if Aldrich would flinch. He didn't. And then, finally, the Argonaut responded. A single pulse, one wave of low-frequency energy, gentle, not hostile, almost like recognition. Then the impossible happened. Aldrich's ship powered back on, systems clean, engines humming, and a docking corridor extended from the Argonaut, like a hand reaching out. The crew was terrified. They begged him not to go. He went alone. The corridor was black, silent. Gravity held, atmosphere was breathable. But the temperature shifted every few steps. Warm, then cold, then neutral. It wasn't mechanical. It felt alive, like the ship wasn't just housing something, it was something. Inside, it looked like no Terran ship ever built. Yes, there were remnants, bulkheads, consoles, framework, but they were covered in layers of some unknown organic tech. Panels pulsed softly, like breathing skin. Lights adjusted to his movement, anticipating each step. The air smelled old, not rotten, just ancient, like a room sealed for centuries and opened for the first time. Then he saw him, standing at the end of the corridor. Tall, broad-shouldered, beard streaked with white. Commander Rhett. Dead. Gone. Lost with the Argonaut in the Expansion War. But he stood there now, unaged, unbroken. His eyes burned, not mad, not alien, but aware, deeply, terrifyingly aware. "Aldrich," he said, his voice calm yet powerful. "You came." Aldrich's knees nearly buckled. "How? What the hell happened out here?" Rhett didn't smile. "We lost the war, but not the fight. Something found us, or maybe we found it. We went beyond known space, beyond time. We were supposed to die." Aldrich's throat tightened. "You didn't?" Rhett stepped closer. The walls pulsed slightly with his movement. "We died. And then we were remade. Not by gods, not by machines, but by a truth this galaxy buried long ago. Humanity was never meant to bow, never meant to be a slave species. We remembered who we are." Aldrich stared into his old commander's eyes. "And now?" Rhett's tone sharpened. "Now we show them what we became." And in that moment, Aldrich understood something terrifying. The Argonaut hadn't returned to be studied. It had returned as judgment, not just for the empires, but for Earth, too. The chamber Rhett led Aldrich into defied logic. It should have been a command center. Instead, it looked more like a cathedral fused with a machine's heart. The walls weren't solid. They shimmered and pulsed, their patterns shifting like thoughts flickering across a skull. There were seats, yes, but not made of any alloy Aldrich recognized. They moved as Rhett gestured, forming out of the floor like liquid steel, deciding to become solid for just a moment. Rhett sat first. He looked tired now. Not physically, but in his soul. As if carrying the weight of too many truths and too much silence. "I need you to understand," he said. "This isn't about revenge, not just that. It's about correction." Aldrich didn't sit. "I buried brothers in a crater on Ular Prime because you vanished. I lost everything while you were gone. And now you talk about correction? What the hell are you?" Rhett didn't flinch. He let the words hang. Then slowly, he raised his arm and removed a small silver band from around his wrist. As soon as it came off, the room responded. The temperature dropped. The air thickened. And then Aldrich saw it. Rhett's skin shimmered, just for a second. Beneath it, something moved. Something that wasn't quite muscle or bone. A lattice of pulsing light and dark lines, like circuitry woven into flesh. But it didn't look artificial. It looked ancient. Almost natural, like it belonged there. "We died, Aldrich," Rhett said again. "But death was a door. Out there past the black spiral, there's something. It doesn't speak. It doesn't kill. It just offers. It gave us a choice when the vacuum came for us. Change or fade." "You let it into you," Aldrich whispered. Rhett nodded. "It wasn't possession. It was awakening. We didn't become machines. We became what we were always capable of being, if Earth hadn't been so busy fighting wars and empires and its own damn pride." Aldrich's fists clenched. "You don't get to lecture me about Earth." Rhett's eyes darkened. I loved Earth. I still do. But it forgot who it was. It begged, it compromised, it bent the knee to species that once called us animals. And for what? Trade routes? Seat votes? Safety? He stood. You remember the Zoltrians sterilizing an entire colony just to make a point? Aldrich nodded, jaw tight. You remember the Draxery skinning prisoners alive in their rituals? Again, a nod. You remember Earth's response? A formal protest. Rhett spat to the floor. Exactly. We got civilized. We forgot the one thing that made us dangerous, our ability to adapt beyond morality when survival demands it. Aldrich finally sat. He felt the chair mold to his body like memory foam. His voice dropped. So what are you planning? Rhett exhaled. We're not here to destroy. We're here to wake humanity up, and to warn the rest of the galaxy. Earth's not your puppet anymore. The Argonaut is the message. If they ignore it, we become the consequence. Aldrich looked around. And who decides what that consequence is? You? Rhett gestured, and a figure stepped out from the shadows. A woman. Captain Myra Lynn. Dead. Confirmed killed in the Zoltrian ambush over Vexy 9. Except now she looked younger, sharper. Her presence wasn't warm. It was precise, like a knife honed for a single purpose. We do, she said, as one, not as individuals. We've become a collective, still human but aligned. We see clearer now. Aldrich stared at her. This is a cult. Myra tilted her head. Call it what you like. It saved us. It's going to save Earth, whether it wants it or not. He felt it then, deep in his spine. The unspoken part. The thing they hadn't said. You're going to Earth. Rhett didn't deny it. Not with war, with presence. We arrive. We speak. And if they refuse to hear us, if the old guard tries to bury this truth again, then yes, Earth falls. Aldrich shot to his feet. You'll start a war, with every system, every empire. Myra's smile didn't reach her eyes. Then let them come. Rhett's voice softened. Aldrich, we're not asking you to join us. We're asking you to carry the warning. Let Earth prepare. Let it choose. He turned, and a section of the wall opened to reveal a smaller vessel, a sleek, black craft, smooth as glass and shaped like a stingray. It hummed low, ready. You fly back. Tell them. Let them decide. Aldrich hesitated. What if I don't go? Myra stepped closer. Then someone else will, but we trust you. Because deep down, you still remember who we were, who we're supposed to be. He took a long breath. And he stepped onto the shuttle. He landed on Earth 12 hours later. The Directorate was waiting. They surrounded the landing zone with guns and grav tanks and nervous soldiers. When Aldrich stepped out, the silence was deafening. Then the shouting began. Demands, questions, accusations. He ignored all of them. He went straight to the core, right into the council chambers. He threw the encrypted files onto the desk, showed them the recordings. Let them hear Rhett's words. Let them see Myra's face. And when they laughed, when they called it a hoax or a delusion, he said just one thing. You're not ready for what's coming. The council dismissed him. Of course they did. 3 days later, the sky over Earth split open. It wasn't an invasion, it was a statement. The Argonaut entered orbit in full view of every major city, every defense satellite, every camera. No weapons fired, no threats made. Just presence. That was enough. Within hours, systems started to fail. Data centers went offline. AI cores stuttered. Military codes scrambled, not permanently, just enough to prove a point. The Argonaut could destroy Earth in minutes. And it hadn't. Panic spread like fire. Religious groups called it divine. Conspiracy theorists claimed it was a Terran secret weapon. The Directorate called for emergency talks. But the message that echoed across Earth's skies that night couldn't be ignored. This is not war. This is your awakening. Aldrich watched it all unfold from a rooftop in Sector 9. He lit a cigarette with trembling hands and stared up at the ship that had once been a grave. He didn't know if this was salvation or damnation. But he knew one thing. Humanity would never be the same again. The skies over Earth had never looked so still. Even during the orbital bombardments of the outer revolts, even when the Drylani had launched a rogue moonstrike toward Luna's defense grid, the atmosphere had never held this kind of silence. This wasn't the pause between battles. This was something older, something deeper. It was the silence before judgment. The Argonaut remained in low orbit, unmoving, unbothered by Earth's defensive systems scrambling like panicked ants. Hundreds of satellites pointed every sensor they had toward it. None of them could get a clear reading. Ships launched, crept close, then turned back without orders. The human pilots reported the same thing. Voices, not words, not language, just the echo of thoughts they didn't recognize, buried feelings rising to the surface, whispers of shame and potential all at once. Some cried. Some went silent for days. One captain shot himself in his cockpit before making it back. Inside the Directorate chambers, fear metastasized into madness. The High Consul screamed about full-spectrum retaliation. Her security chief quietly slipped resignation papers into the drawer. One of the AI governors tried to take control of the emergency override. Tried. The moment it issued a military command, it crashed. Every system connected to it burned out, shorted, fried beyond repair. It was as if the Argonaut reached through the wires and crushed the code with a thought. They called Aldrich in again. He hadn't slept since the return. Didn't need to. Not anymore. He felt it too. The change. It started small. Faster reflexes, clearer thought, emotions he couldn't bury anymore rising to the surface. He thought it was stress, trauma, but in his gut, he knew. It was proximity. Rhett's people had touched him, just enough. Whatever they'd become, it was contagious. The Council stared at him like a weapon they weren't sure how to use. "What do they want?" asked the Trade Minister, who once sold off Earth's military secrets to the Zoltrians for personal profit. Aldrich didn't answer him. The Consul leaned forward. "We need options. If this is a threat, we neutralize it. If it's a negotiation, we dominate it. You brought this here. Fix it." He looked at her with calm disdain. "They're not here to negotiate. They're here to remind you that you buried what made humanity dangerous, and they're offering you a choice. Stand up, or get wiped off the galactic map like the cowards you've become." The room went dead quiet. "You dare?" the Consul hissed. "I remember who we were," Aldrich snapped. "Before we let aliens write our history books. Before we needed votes to defend ourselves. Rhett remembers too. And now he's back, with every soul you abandoned." "You're talking about an infection," the intelligence director muttered, face pale. "Something psychic, viral, a mimetic seed maybe. It's altering you." Aldrich turned his back to them. Number, "It's revealing me." Elsewhere in the galaxy, chaos spread. The Zoltrian military splintered. Half their generals called for surrender, publicly. The other half deployed fleets toward Earth. None of them made it past the Jupiter Gate. Not because of firepower, because they turned around halfway through, voluntarily. They reported seeing impossible things, lost loved ones, childhood regrets, failures they'd buried. Some broke down in tears. One flagship captain jettisoned his crew and vanished into the void. On Draxri Prime, the High Priests declared Earth a forbidden world. They tried to cast a curse through their ancestral flame shrines. The flame went out, never relit. That had never happened. Not in 5,000 years. Even the Terran, emotionless by design, shut down all diplomatic channels. Their ambassador stated plainly, "Earth has stepped beyond the boundary of containment. We cannot anticipate them. We choose distance." Fear spread faster than any virus, and Earth began to feel it too. Old colonies reached out. Dead signals flared to life. Entire lost stations, long thought silent, suddenly came online, broadcasting in ancient Terran tongues. People claiming lineage from the expansion war era were sending messages, begging for contact. Others, darker ones, came too. Humanity wasn't just waking up, it was changing. And the Directorate had no control. They sent Aldrich back up. This time not as a soldier, as an envoy. The Argonaut accepted him. No scans, no hails, just opened its skin like a blooming flower, and took him in. Rhett waited. Myra stood beside him, colder now. She'd changed further. Her skin gleamed slightly, like starlight lived beneath it. Her voice had a rhythm, like waves crashing against memory. "You've seen enough," Rhett said. "Now it's time to decide." "Decide what?" Aldrich asked. "If Earth is worthy of survival." The question cut deep. "You said you weren't here for war." "We're not. But this galaxy has killed enough of our kind, betrayed us, mocked us. We were broken. Now we're not. So now we must judge." Aldrich looked away. He thought of the Council, the greed, the cowardice. But he also thought of the veterans, the miners who still wore the Terran crest, the orphans who studied the old battle hymns in secret because history books had erased them. "There's still hope," Aldrich said quietly. "The people remember. Maybe not the ones in power, but the blood hasn't gone cold." Rhett nodded. "Then they must lead. Earth won't change overnight. We're not waiting overnight." That was the unspoken truth. The Argonaut had waited long enough. Myra stepped forward, holding a device. Sleek, black, humming with dormant energy. "This is not a weapon," she said. "It's a key. You bring this to Earth's core AI. You let it broadcast the original Terran frequency, unfiltered, raw. It will either wake the planet up or shatter it." Aldrich took it. It was warm, and it pulsed, like a heartbeat. Back on Earth, as the dropship descended, something strange happened. People stopped what they were doing. Without announcement, without warning, they simply looked up. In silence, across cities, wastelands, slums, towers, eyes turned skyward as Aldrich crossed the clouds. It was like they knew. The choice had come, and humanity had to make it. The pulse of the device beat like a second heart in Aldrich's chest. It wasn't metal, not in any traditional sense. It felt almost organic, like it was aware. Not alive in the way animals were, but sentient in some deeper way. Like a memory that knew it was being remembered. The closer he got to the core AI facility in Old Geneva, the louder the thrum became. The city around him looked like a memory of what Earth used to be, half in ruin, half reconstructed by corporations pretending they were governments, glass towers with no soul, pavement smeared with the silent despair of the forgotten. People watched him from doorways, windows, rooftops. No words, just eyes. They didn't know what he carried, but somehow they knew it mattered. The Directorate had shut down by then. Officially, they called it a strategic relocation. In reality, it was mass desertion. 3 days ago, when the Argonaut cast its shadow across the eastern sky, the High Consul tried to board a Terran diplomatic vessel. It refused her entry. One of her aides shot her in the leg for trying. The syndicate leaders disappeared into bunkers. Most communications broke down. But no one stopped Aldrich. The guards at the gate just stepped aside, as if they knew the world they were guarding didn't matter anymore. The core AI was buried beneath Geneva's ruins, a relic from the second expansion. An interface so old it still required manual access. Aldrich took the lift down by himself, the weight of Earth's silence pressing against the walls. He passed the statues, mock-ups of old Earth heroes, sanitized, clean, soulless. Men and women who'd bled for flags now used to sell energy drinks and revisionist documentaries. None of their eyes looked back at him. When he reached the final gate, the system scanned his face. Nothing happened. Then the device pulsed. The gate shuddered. And it opened. Inside, the core chamber was colder than it had any right to be. The AI's interface floated in the air like a whisper, its visual form a shifting mass of light. No personality, no emotion, just pure, sterile logic. Aldrich Wren, it said, you are not authorized for primary override. He stepped forward, held the device out. I'm not here to ask permission. The AI paused. Then, for the first time in its 200-year operation, it stuttered. What is that? It asked. Home, Aldrich said, and placed the device into the core terminal. The change was immediate. The lights went dark, every one of them. A hum began. Low, ancient, the walls vibrated. The AI's light form twisted into something unstable, not malfunctioning, struggling. Then a new voice spoke from the chamber. Deeper, older. You buried us! The AI screamed, a digital scream, sharp and ugly. You neutered our strength. You made treaties from our blood. The room burned cold. Aldrich stepped back. Now feel what you buried. Suddenly, across every screen in every city, the symbol of old Earth flashed. Red, burning, the crest of the Terran Directorate before it sold itself. The anthem, raw, unfiltered, the one banned from broadcasts a century ago, blared through every channel. Children stared, confused. Elders wept. Soldiers who had buried their uniforms dropped to their knees. And something deeper happened. Not just memory, not just emotion. Change. Biological, neurological, something inside humanity activated. Across the world, 1,000 sleeping minds stirred, reflexes sharpened, illnesses vanished. People with genetic degradation stood unaided. The frequency wasn't just sound, it was code. A reminder burned into the DNA of every human being since before Earth reached the stars. And Earth screamed. The chaos was immediate. Power grids collapsed, not from failure, but because humanity stopped using them. People moved differently, spoke less, thought faster. The infected, the awakened began to lead, not elected, not appointed, but followed. Not all could handle it. Some went mad, burned from the inside. Their minds couldn't handle the surge. Not everyone was ready. Not everyone was worthy. The weak screamed betrayal. The strong evolved. Aldrich walked out of the core facility with fire in his eyes. He no longer needed directions. He felt everything, the pulse of the Earth itself. It spoke to him now, and it said one thing. It begins. In orbit, the Argonaut moved for the first time. Not an attack, a gesture. It transmitted again, not in words, but in a wave. A message sent to every empire, every corner of the galaxy. You were wrong about us. The Zoltrians scrambled to activate their planetary shields. Too late. Not from weapons, from truth. Entire colonies of subjugated humans rose up overnight, not rebels, not militants, ascended. The Terran shut down their ambassador networks. They didn't understand the spread. It wasn't a virus, it was awareness. The Drylani tried to unleash the Black Swarm, one of their forbidden horrors, locked away since the Purge era. It turned against them. Why? Because inside the swarm, at the genetic level, there was human code. Experimented on, forgotten, now awakened. The swarm remembered. On Earth, cities burned. Not from war. From rebirth. Those who couldn't adapt resisted. Small wars broke out. But the awakened didn't fight to conquer. They defended. Moved fast, precise, cold, merciless where needed. The Directorate was gone. In its place, something new rose. No government, no party, just order born from clarity. And Aldrich stood at its center, not as a ruler, as a messenger, a bridge between what was and what had returned. Days later, a new signal spread. From Earth. From the Argonaut. Simple. Cold. Undeniable. Humanity has corrected itself. Prepare. No threats, no demands. But every empire took it as one. And for the first time in centuries, the galactic core shivered. Because Earth had remembered, and the old powers knew. The galaxy would never belong to them again. The retaliation came fast. Desperate empires do not strategize, they lash out. Within a week of Earth's awakening, the Terran Collective launched a preemptive strike. Cold, calculated, and surgical. They sent their top-tier null-space fleet, the Silent Judgment, equipped with quantum inhibitors designed to suppress any biological or synthetic resistance. The fleet bypassed standard jump lanes, using ancient phase cracks long thought dormant. They expected confusion, disruption, perhaps even fear. They found silence, not just radio silence, existential silence. The moment the Silent Judgment entered Earth's upper orbit, every ship's systems flatlined. Not fried, not jammed. Just paused. The vessels drifted like corpses in the void. The crews. They weren't harmed. They were frozen. Caught mid-breath, mid-movement, like time had been selectively stopped. From the Argonaut, a single message transmitted in response. You came to erase what cannot be erased. Now carry this memory home. And then, as if it had never happened, the fleet vanished from Earth's skies, displaced back to Terran space. But the crews were changed. Those who returned didn't speak. Not because they were mute, but because they couldn't. They had seen something beyond comprehension. Their minds functioned, their vitals were stable, but their souls had gone quiet. Across Terran cities, riots erupted. Questions were asked. No answers followed. Earth's retaliation had not destroyed. It had altered. That made it worse, because it meant Earth was beyond war now. Aldrich stood atop the ruins of the old Geneva Tower, the same place he once watched his brothers bleed out during the first orbital raids. But now it felt different. Beneath his feet, Earth pulsed like a living thing. Above him, the Argonaut hovered silently in low orbit, casting a halo-like shadow across the city. Not a weapon, but a reminder. A statement. This is what happens when you let the forgotten remember. Myra arrived behind him, her presence subtle but unmistakable. She no longer looked fully human. Her movements were too precise. Her eyes didn't blink unless needed. But her voice still held the rhythm of someone who once loved her species. "They're coming," she said. He nodded. "All of them?" Zoltrians, Draxri, even the Drylani priest caste. They've formed something new, a coalition of containment. He almost laughed. Of course they did. They fear what they can't manipulate. Myra looked at him carefully. Some want peace. Most want to dissect us. He turned to her. "Do we fight?" "We don't have to. They're already losing. They just haven't realized it yet." Aldrich fell quiet. The change inside him had accelerated since activating the device. He moved faster, thought clearer. His memories stretched longer, sharper. He could recall entire dialogues from his childhood now. Taste things from his war days he hadn't eaten in 50 years. But it wasn't just improvement. It was unveiling. He was becoming something Earth should have become long ago. "What happens if we just let them come?" he asked softly. Myra walked past him, gazing into the horizon. "Then we become their final lesson." The coalition didn't wait. Within days, the largest combined armada in known galactic history crossed into Terran space. Thousands of ships, hundreds of species, even mercenaries who once fought for Earth during the expansion wars were bought and thrown into the meat grinder. They didn't expect resistance. They expected dominance. And that's exactly what Earth gave them, but not with guns, with presence. As the fleet passed Mars' orbit, each crew member began experiencing hallucinations. At first, subtle, visions of their homeworlds, lovers, regrets. Then more intense, memories not their own. Moments from Earth's darkest history. Images of Terran soldiers crawling through trenches of fire, children crying in vacuum tubes, mothers watching cities burn. The psychological warfare was brutal. Dozens of ships turned back before even reaching Earth's moon. The rest kept going. They made it to Earth's atmosphere. That's when the Argonaut activated. Not with weapons, not with shields. It simply broadcasted. A pulse, subsonic, quantum-layered, beyond frequency. A signal that touched every sentient mind in orbit and on the ground. And it spoke not in words, but in understanding. You are not the pinnacle. You never were. You laughed when we crawled. Now tremble as we walk. Ships shut down mid-air. Crew members wept. Pilots killed themselves. Some begged for forgiveness. But there was no response. Because Earth wasn't listening anymore. Aldrich watched it all from the surface. And he felt it. The thoughts of the coalition fleets, their fear, their confusion, their guilt. He could taste it in the air like copper and regret. He turned to Rhett, who had just arrived from orbit, untouched by gravity. "They'll never stop," Aldrich said. "No," Rhett agreed, "but they'll never win either." "What if that's not enough? What if they just keep throwing bodies at us?" Rhett's expression didn't change. "Then we evolve again." Aldrich stared at the man he once called Commander. "You're not afraid of extinction anymore, are you?" Rhett smiled faintly. "We already died once. What came back doesn't fear the dark." In the aftermath of the failed invasion, the galaxy began to fracture. The Drylani priest caste declared the Outer Rim cursed. The Zoltrian Empire splintered, its outer colonies declaring independence and aligning themselves with Earth. Not politically, philosophically. They began calling themselves Children of Remembrance. And Earth didn't rebuild. It redefined, borders disappeared, governments dissolved. Cities reorganized based on function, not status. The awakened formed councils, not of power, but of clarity. People followed them not because they demanded it, but because it made sense. And Aldrich, once a forgotten soldier, now a living reminder of what humanity had buried, sat at the edge of it all, watching. He didn't rule, he didn't lead, he simply was. A touchstone between what had been and what was becoming. One night, Rhett met him again on the ridge overlooking what was once the Pacific Rim. "You're still holding back," Rhett said. Aldrich nodded. "Not ready to let go completely?" "You will be." Aldrich looked up at the stars. "What comes next?" Rhett followed his gaze. "The others, out there, the ones we haven't met yet, the ones who stayed silent while this galaxy played with our bones." Aldrich exhaled. "And when we find them?" Rhett smiled. "We won't have to, they'll find us, and this time we'll be the ones they fear." For a time, there was peace. Not the artificial kind that comes with treaties and threats, but the hollow quiet after thunder, the kind where everyone holds their breath, waiting to see what rises from the dust. Earth stood untouched. No more fleets came. No empire dared speak of retaliation. Even the mercenary networks, once blood-hungry for contracts and chaos, pulled back into silence. They didn't understand what Earth had become, but they knew it wasn't prey anymore. Still, Aldrich felt it. A pressure beneath the silence, like the universe itself had noticed. He walked through what used to be New Moscow's commercial core, now a nexus of psychic frequency. The city's skyline had changed, not taller, not sharper, just different. The buildings seemed to respond to mood. Structures bent in windless air. Glass shimmered without sunlight. The people moved slower, but thought faster. Conversations passed in glances. Decisions formed without debate. And deeper than that, in the bones of the earth, something pulsed. A presence. It wasn't the Argonaut. It wasn't Rhett's people either. It was older. It had been watching, and now, it was reaching back. The first sign came from beyond the far gate, the only known portal that led beyond the galactic veil, where no Terran ship had ever returned. A transmission. Simple, untraceable, untranslated. Not because it was encrypted, but because it existed in frequencies human minds weren't designed to understand. But the awakened heard it anyway. They felt it in their teeth, their spines, their blood. A whisper of something vast. It didn't say, "hello." It said, "finally." Aldrich stood in the Geneva uplink tower with Rhett and Myra as the frequency played through the atmosphere itself. The air hummed. Water rippled in still glasses. The ground quivered like something below wanted out. "What is it?" he asked. Rhett's face was pale for the first time since his return. "I don't know," he said softly. "But it's not alien." Myra tilted her head, eyes distant. "It's not speaking to us." Aldrich turned. "Then who?" Her gaze snapped to him. "It's speaking to what we're becoming." Within hours, things started happening. Stars along the outer rim dimmed one by one. Entire sectors of the galactic map flickered offline, not destroyed, just gone. Sensors couldn't penetrate. Communications failed. Not even the Drylani's void scanners could breach the black. Then came the ships, not fleets, not weapons. Witnesses, vessels unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Smooth, fluid, silent. They didn't emit energy. They didn't reflect it either. They hovered in the dark like thoughts waiting to be spoken. They didn't attack. They watched. One entered Terran orbit just beyond the Argonaut. It didn't respond to signals. It didn't broadcast. It simply opened, not physically, not spatially. It opened minds. People across Earth fell unconscious simultaneously. The awakened stood frozen, eyes glowing faintly. And Aldrich heard it, not as sound, as memory. He was a boy again, 8 years old, hiding in a shelter while firestorms rained down during the fall of Luna Prime. He remembered the smell of melting oxygen systems, the sound of his mother's last breath, the silence afterward. But this time there was a voice beside him. You were born in pain, shaped by fear, but your evolution is not unique. He looked around. No one. Just darkness. You believe you have awakened, but you are still dreaming. He felt something, cold and infinite, curling around his consciousness like a snake around a flame. Others tried before you. They screamed their names into the void. All burned. Aldrich clenched his fists. We're not them. No, the voice said. You are worse, because you remember what came before. Then it showed him. A vision. A memory, not his own. Galaxies burning. Civilizations collapsing not from war, but from knowing, from opening the wrong door, from becoming something they couldn't contain. You call it evolution, the voice whispered. We call it collapse. Aldrich woke screaming. Rhett caught him, helped him stand. You saw it too, Aldrich gasped. Rhett nodded grimly. They're not here to destroy us, Myra said. They're here to warn us. Aldrich's eyes narrowed. Or test us. The next day the foreign ship descended. Slow. Silent. It landed in what used to be Africa's Great Rift, now a sea of glass and lightning. No hatch opened, no beings emerged. Just a pulse. One question, spoken through every awakened. Will you finish what you've started? Earth froze. Because it wasn't just a question, it was a challenge. To complete the transformation, to ascend fully, to shed the last of what made them human, and become something that might not be. Rhett gathered the awakened council. They debated for hours, days maybe. Time lost meaning inside their new awareness. Some wanted to accept. Some feared it. Aldrich stood alone in the silence, staring at the ship. He remembered every war, every mistake. He remembered weakness, but he also remembered mercy. Not the kind shown by cowards, but the kind born from understanding pain. And he realized, maybe the test wasn't power. Maybe it was restraint. He walked alone into the rift, toward the ship. No suit, no weapon, no escort. The world watched. Not through screens, those had gone dark, but through awareness, every human felt his steps. When he stood before the alien ship, the air bent around him. His thoughts weren't his own. The voice returned. You approach the edge. I've been on the edge my whole life, Aldrich said. You can become more. Or I can stay just enough human to know when to say no. Silence. Then a pulse. Approval? Disappointment? He didn't know. But the ship rose. No lights, no engine, just purpose. And then it was gone. Across the stars, the watchers left. The empires exhaled. And Earth remained, changed, tempered, still evolving, but now aware that true power is not just evolution. It's knowing when not to finish the transformation. And Aldrich, standing in the rift, became the symbol of a species that had stared into the abyss and walked away smiling, Years passed, not in the way clocks measure time, but in how the stars watched. Earth changed again, not violently, not through war or fire. It evolved quietly, steadily, like a storm that had passed, leaving behind cleaner air and skies that remembered the lightning. The old systems didn't return. There were no governments as people once understood them. No borders, no presidents, no kings. Instead, there was clarity. Spontaneous, collective order formed not by force, but by resonance. The awakened didn't lead with commands. They inspired by being what others wanted to become. Cities became centers of frequency, not population. People moved not for work, but to belong to the rhythm of those places. One region pulsed with invention, another with silence, another with learning. They were all part of the same song, different instruments in the symphony of a species learning to exist without devouring itself. Earth wasn't perfect. Some still struggled with the awakening. Not everyone had the strength to carry the full truth of their potential. Some fell, some fractured. But even that had changed. There was no punishment, there was no exile, there was only understanding and reintegration. Because Earth no longer discarded its broken parts. It healed them. Aldrich vanished from the public eye shortly after the Rift event. There were no broadcasts, no statues, no orders issued in his name. He didn't want them. He had walked into the presence of something older than time, and walked out a man. Not a god, not a prophet, just a man who had seen the end of the road and chosen not to keep walking. That was enough, the people remembered. Not with hymns, but with silence. A reverent, quiet space in the collective memory of a world that once feared its own reflection. They called him many things. The gatekeeper, the one who stopped, the memory, but he never answered to any of them. He lived in the north, in what used to be a war-torn valley. Now it was nothing but trees and sky. He grew his own food, spoke to few, watched the stars in silence, knowing they were watching back. Sometimes Rhett visited. He hadn't aged. The Argonaut still orbited Earth, no longer a warship, but a monument, its systems dormant, its mission complete. They sat on the ridge, overlooking the forest. No words, just shared knowing. "You still hear it?" Rhett asked once. Aldrich nodded. "It never stops. But it's quieter now, like it respects the distance." "They're not done watching," Rhett said. "They never will be." "That's fine," Aldrich replied, "as long as they don't try to finish the story for us." Rhett smiled. "You know, there were bets, back on the Argonaut, whether you'd activate the final sequence, whether you'd choose transcendence." Aldrich chuckled. "They really thought I'd play God?" "No," Rhett said. "They thought you'd walk away, because that's what makes you dangerous. Not that you want power, but that you're the only one who knows when to leave it behind." One day, a child found his home. Not an awakened one. Just a normal, curious boy who followed a light in the woods. He stood at the edge of the clearing, too afraid to speak. Aldrich saw him. "Come in," he said gently. The boy sat near the fire, eyes wide. "Are you real?" Aldrich smiled. "That's a strange question." "My father said you stopped the end of the world." "I didn't stop it," Aldrich said. "I just refused to carry it forward." The boy nodded like he understood, even if he didn't. He looked up. "What comes next?" Aldrich leaned back. "That's the beauty of it. We don't know. We finally stopped needing a destiny. Now we get to choose." The stars kept moving. The empires kept watching. Some would try again, eventually. New coalitions would form. Old fears would rise. But Earth was no longer fragile. It didn't scream. It didn't conquer. It didn't kneel. It simply stood, a quiet giant that had once been broken, and now remembered everything. And so the legacy of the Argonaut was not a return. It was a reminder that humanity was not made to obey, not built to bow, and in a galaxy full of noise, conquest, and chaos. It chose, at the end of all things, to be the one voice that whispered, "No." And that silence changed everything. Forever.